Hey, it's Tommy Allen from TommyAllenMusic.com. Welcome. This week we have the amazing Roger Inniss. Let's get to it. Thank you, Roger, for coming on board.
Okay,
and
right, perfect.
being a part of this. It's a pleasure. We've met a couple of times, I believe.
Yeah, we have, yeah.
I think. Can you remember the first time?
Actually, it was quite a few years ago, wasn't it? But I remember it was a long time ago. I don't remember too much about the details. Go on, you'll have to remind me.
It was late at night, probably about midnight, and it was in a service station, and I was getting a drink, and then I saw Joanne Shaw Taylor come in, and you was following her, and it was years ago.
Wow.
And I said, "All right," and you looked at me, you went, "All right."
Sorry.
Actually,
that was a long time ago.
Oh, how long ago had that been when you was with Joanne Shaw Taylor?
Oh, actually, that's got to be over 10 years.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Over 10 years. Over 10 years. It's probably closer to 12 or something like that. I'm not very good at remembering dates like that, to be brutally honest. So.
Right. But yeah, that's the first time I remember our encounter, and then the second time I remember was with Lawrence.
Oh yeah, okay.
And that was probably the one you remember. That was the most recent, like last couple
of
years.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, yeah.
And then I've messaged you a few times, I stalked you and said.
Yeah. Well, we keep on talking about getting together and having a jam and playing and rehearsing and stuff. You know what I mean? And it's never happened yet. But like you said, it's just around the corner, aren't we? Really? So.
Let's jump into this. So, what's your sort of first introduction to music?
Church.
Church, okay.
Basically, yeah, church. As a young kid, my parents used to try and get some peace and quiet on a Sunday, so they would send me and my brother and my sister, there's three of us, off to church, and you know, like a West Indian church, black church. You'd be there all day. You'd leave, the van would come and pick you up at 10 o'clock in the morning, right. And you'd go and you wouldn't come back until about 6 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night. I mean, you'd be there all day. And so consequently, my first experience of being at church all day, I was obviously very bored. And then they started playing music, and that kind of interested me. So I then started playing a little bit of, I got hold of an acoustic guitar and I remember the first thing I tried to do was try to play like a boogie woogie bass line, you know, in F. But I couldn't work out where F was. So I worked out where the C was, but I tuned the E string up to F to get the lower note. And when I showed one of the guys, he laughed at me and he tuned it back and showed me where the F was. And that's, you know, the rest is history. You know what I mean,
right.
As they say.
So then that was on the guitar?
That was on the guitar, yes. Yeah. I played a little, when I first started, played a little bit of guitar for about 3 or 4 years. But I found the guitar really, for me, it was really flimsy. You know what I mean? I kept breaking strings and I'd push into the guitar a little bit and it would choke and back off, you know. Whereas the bass, you know, I could put some energy into it and it would seem to sustain it. You know what I mean? It would seem to kind of give it back to me. But the guitar, for me, I just find a little bit flimsy. I find it a little bit,
right. You meant,
Does that make sense?
Yeah. You mentioned your brother and sister. Are you the oldest or youngest? Or?
I'm the oldest. Yeah, well, my brother's a year younger than me, and my sister is 4 years younger than me.
Okay, and
So,
what sort of music was
I'm,
being played in your house when you was growing up?
basically West Indian music, soca, high, the kind of high life sort of lots of calypso music was that. That was the basic kind of thing that was being played in the house. There wasn't a lot of it, you know what I mean? But that was what was my parents were playing if they were playing anything. So
Well, they encourage you with your music.
not at all. They just let me sort of get on with doing whatever I was going to do when I was there, just to kind of But they it's only recent. I think my mom's only ever been to 2 gigs in my whole entire existence, and I don't. I mean, my dad's been dead, quite a few years, over 30 years, and he never came to a gig. You know what I mean? Um, but I think what was interesting was I had a next door neighbor. I had a guy who lived an Irish guy who lived a couple of roads over, and his dad had a great jazz collection, and he was also a musician. So sometimes I'd go over and listen to his record collection. Louis Stewart, great jazz guitar player, and Miles Davis and stuff like that. That was where I think I got my kind of outward musical education, was going over and hanging out with him and listening to his dad's records. I mean, that's what I remember more than
And
anything.
how old was you then?
12, 13, something like that. Yeah, it was quite late. I mean, quite late to start playing, isn't it? Really, maybe 14. I was still at school because I used to go over. Fortunately, he lived across the road from the school, so in the dinner time, sometimes instead of playing in the playground, we just run across to his house and fool about for a little bit, and then go back to the classroom. So, and then after school, I'd go around to his straight away and hang out with him for a little bit. Then I'd walk the next road over, and that's where I lived. So yeah, about that age, yeah.
And when did you find the bass? Because if you started on guitar, how did you leap to bass?
What happened? I think I started. Well, it just developed from that fact of playing. When you're in church and you play an instrument, you've got to kind of accompany loads of different people, and you've got to, so you play a bit of guitar and a bit of bass, and you try and play a little bit of keyboards and a little bit of drums. You try and do a little bit of everything so everybody can swap round. And I just found that playing just from playing the bass, it just seemed to speak to me. I mean, it seemed to be it seemed to make sense to me, really. And I had another friend of mine who lived a couple of roads down, and we went to the Odeon in Birmingham to see a film of Yes. They were touring films in those days, and I saw Chris Squire playing a Rickenbacker, and I thought that was the most amazing sound that I'd ever heard. And so that was the concrete for me. That kind of reinforced the fact that that's what I wanted to do. So I don't know if that's answered your question.
Yeah,
But that's how I was thinking.
no,
Yeah.
it's great, man. It's great to find out how you got into it and how you found your path to the bass. And obviously once you picked that up, that was the start of it for you.
Yes, I think once I started playing bass and coming to guitar, the idea from guitar, I converted to bass. Some of the harmony things and some of the solo things. I mean, just trying to make it a little bit more musical. But once I started playing bass, that just made so much more sense. You know what I mean? It was my instrument. You know what I mean? It just I was able to express myself. And there was to put energy into it, and it would give me energy back. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I felt about the bass.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
how old are you right now?
This minute,
Yeah,
59.
59. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Wouldn't
Yeah.
think that at all. You're doing well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the bit that you're gonna have to cut out.
I'd keep it a secret. Shut up. You'll be all right. Now I understand why the technology side maybe.
Thanks. Phil Wilson is always calling me an old man. He always laughs at me. You know what I mean? Because of technology and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I think I do all right, but obviously I don't do as well as the young kids. I don't understand it. You know what I mean?
No,
So,
well,
yeah.
I'm borderline with some of it. I can't text with
Yeah.
both thumbs at the same time. But what's your sort of musical setup then? Do you keep that sort of quite basic?
What you mean?
Well, do you
When
have
you say music,
loads of pedals and all that stuff, or are you?
I've got lots of pedals. I've got in fact it's downstairs. I didn't think about bringing it in this room to show you, but I've got quite a big pedal board. Um, because from very early on, the only thing that I thought about the bass was it was a great instrument to play, but it used to sound quite boring. You know what I mean? It was, in those days, not very many people used pedals and stuff on bass. They used to just play them straight through for an amp. So I've always had octave dividers and harmonizers and choruses and reverbs and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And of course, coming from like a jazz thing, when you're playing solos, you want a slightly different sound. You know what I mean? Slightly bit more presence, a little bit more top end and stuff like that. So I would always have a pedal board. So yeah, I've got quite an extensive pedal board and stuff like that. Yeah.
And have you ever played with a pick at all?
Not very often. Every now and again, somebody might ask me to play with one in the studio, or just to upset me. You know what I mean? Just to wind me up. They'll ask me to play with a pick, but not very often. You know what I mean? Yeah, I like the sound, but I don't have the facility. You know what I mean? Maybe I need to do it more. Maybe that's the thing. But at the minute, the facility of being able to play well with a pick, I don't really have that at all.
So
Yeah.
you're not doing any sort of riffs like the Chili Peppers sort of stuff or anything where you need a pick to get the speed up?
No, I mean, if I think most things that I end up playing, even if they're really fast, I can do with my fingers. Do you know what I mean? I
Okay.
think I've got that facility. I suppose, and that's why I don't usually use a pick, is because I haven't really come across anything that I haven't been able to do with my fingers except for the sound of that, that plastic against the string, that you can't reproduce that. But if it's a notation thing, then usually I can get around it by playing with my fingers and stuff. You know what I
Right,
mean?
okay. And
Depending.
there's,
Yeah,
what would
yeah.
you say is the hard technique to learn on bass? More advanced?
What would I say was a one?
Yeah, what would you say for people learning the bass now? Would you sort of say is quite a hard technique to learn? Is
Um,
slap hard?
I don't think slap is hard, really. I don't think that playing slap. I think playing slap bass is quite easy. The art of it is to think like a drummer. Bass drum with the thumb, snare drum with the first finger. Um, Shall I demonstrate it?
Yeah, you can do because I've heard some level 42 stuff and that, where he's
So bass drum, snare drum. That's the basic technique, and from that, you've just got incidentals. Yeah, the rhythm, the rhythm, the consistent rhythm. So you maybe and a little bit of dampening, and you've got like a consistent rhythm thing. But you're thinking drums all the time, and then the odd fill. But you're thinking like a drummer, bass drum, snare drum, bass drum, snare drum, and then the odd fill. So I think as a
are you slapping the strings like with your side of your thumb and
yeah, yeah,
pulling with your finger that hits the
yeah.
fretboard? And that was for you. You picked up quite quickly then the slap side.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not an expert on it. There's some guys that are absolutely amazing. I think the more you think, the actual playing thing is one thing, but it's the way people think these days. I think that is the most amazing thing. The technique with anything, two-handed tapping, anything is relatively easy to do. You know what I mean? It's about repetition and stuff, but having the ideas, what I mean, playing stuff that is not the normal, or outside of the scale, or outside of the stuff that people expect to hear. That's where the genius is. That's where
So
the
that's where
people are really
you'd say
taking up.
the hard stuff is sitting in the pocket and less is
Yeah,
more sort of thing.
yeah. Once you find a groove and you sit on it, it's quite easy. Um, making it feel good. That's one thing. Making it feel right. You know what I mean? Finding where the drummer's at and stuff. But all that I think is relatively easy if you understand the job of the bass. What's the function of the bass? What is it there for? It's there to support rhythmically and harmonically. Just so once you understand that and you do that, then you're in good shape. You know what I mean? But then there's some guys that just think on different planets. You know what I mean? They just have so many great ideas and so many things that you wouldn't have thought of, and that's where I think. So that's where I think a lot of people are really shine these days, especially with all the internet. They take a bit of this, a bit of Chili Peppers, a bit of Marcus Miller, a bit of Stanley Clarke, and they mix them all together. And then they live in Bournemouth and they see the seaside and they hear the sea and they add all that in, and all of a sudden this music comes out of them, and you're going, wow, that's amazing. How did the thing? And then another guy listens to the same three people, but he lives in London in a tower block, and he plays it, and it's a completely different attitude because of where he lives and how he interprets it. You know what I mean? But the information itself, I think, is quite easy. It's quite straightforward, really. Yeah.
What's important to you from a drummer? Like, what do you look for in a drummer?
Usually, and this is that odd thing that people talk about all the time. It's a feel thing, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's the idea of how people place the snare drum and how they place the bass drum. The space in between it. It's not, it's not what you do, it's what you don't do. Do you know what I mean? So some people play the snare with a lot of grace notes, and so there's something happening all the time. Some people just play the grace and there's the snare drum, there's very few grace notes. Some people play the bass drum and there's lots of grace notes and there's lots of busyness that's happening in between it. Sometimes that can be exciting, sometimes that can get in the way. But, I like with a shuffle, I like the bass, the drums to be slightly in front of me. I like the snare drum to be slightly in front, so that the bass, so I can play longer notes. And if the drummer sits behind me, then I need to play shorter notes to keep the the music moving forward. So from a shuffle point of view, I like to be at the back of the beat, so I like the drums to be slightly ahead. If it's a funk thing, right in the middle. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's a jazz thing, right at the front, I suppose, and then everything else in between, I suppose, really, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So who is your sort of top two bass players?
Wow, ask me how far it is to the moon. The easy question. There's so many. There are so many. I love people like Ron Carter and Paul Chambers, all those double bass players. Marcus Miller, Anthony Jackson. Do you know what I mean? All those kind of guys, all that kind of 70s, fusiony jazz thing. You know what I mean? It's just. I don't know. There's too many. There really is too many in this day and age. There's too many to think about, really. I don't know if I could give you. I don't know if I could give you two.
You give me plenty. That's fine. I've heard of a few of them.
Yeah.
And how did your journey get into blues? Because obviously that's where I've sort of seen you mostly around.
I did that. I suppose that started because very early on with Joanne Shaw Taylor, for instance. So Joanne lived in Birmingham. I lived in Birmingham. I think I was playing with a drummer called Jamie Little. Jamie, and I think we were her second band. She'd had a band before with some other musicians, and her dad, who was sort of managing her at the time, I think wanted to upgrade the band or take it to the next level, and got in touch with Jamie, who got in touch with me. And so I started doing some demos, bits of recording for her. And then, as it would happen, Joanne was just about to sign, I think she's already signed to Roof Records and in Germany. And they were going to do a tour. And the bass player, who was an American guy, Mike Greer, his mother got ill, I think. And so he couldn't do the tour. And so they asked Joanne, what do you think? And Joanne said that, she recommended me to do the tour. And so I started working with Roof Records from there. And that kind of, I suppose that kind of led me into it. The blues thing is very close to the jazz thing, which is very close to the gospel thing. So they're all kind of musically, it's all the same, really, I suppose, really, to me. I mean, from a point of view. Jamie Little, for instance, his dad, was a great soul singer. You know what I mean? So in my early days, when Jamie was a little boy, you know what I mean? And I'm sure you won't appreciate me saying this, but you know, as a young kid, I used to play with Jamie's dad in the band Curtis Little, and that was a soul band. So we used to play. There was always a lot of soul and blues around in those days. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Okay, so you're from Birmingham. Is that what
I'm
you're?
from Birmingham. Birmingham. Yeah, yeah. Born and bred.
Born and bred. Okay, yeah. So and so you're part of that band, the Curtis Little.
Yeah, I mean that that there was in those days there was such a great music scene. It's one of those things where you could go out and see music every night of the week, and you could see a handful of different things as well. You know what I mean? You could go from jazz gigs to rock gigs, and you know what I mean, and Irish. There were Irish pubs that had gigs on. You know what I mean? So you'd see country things, you'd see funky things. There was a lot of music, yeah, and a lot of musicians and stuff around in those days, and it was really good. It was really good fun. It was really entertaining as well. I can't,
How much has it changed in over the
well,
years?
um, well, it's like everywhere. For some reason, a lot of venues have closed or changed hands. You know,
But Birmingham, I thought Birmingham would be like thriving with music, but I've never really done much in Birmingham.
exactly. There was a time. You know what I mean? I used to play when I first started doing professional gigs and stuff. I would play with Steve Gibbons or Ruby Turner, and I'd go off and do a tour with them for 3 weeks somewhere, and then I'd come home and have a bunch of, you know, Monday night and Tuesday night I'd do a jazz gig, then I'd do something bluesy or rocky Wednesday, Thursday, Friday I'd probably do a covers, and then maybe Saturday one of those other band, maybe Steve Gibbons would have a gig or Ruby would have a gig, or you know there'd be something else to do. You know what I mean? And then Sunday I do a jazz gig Sunday lunchtime, and then do something Sunday night. You know what I mean? There were just the two. You used to be able to do 8 gigs a week if you wanted to, and do some decent gigs, earning some good money, and do some other great gigs that were just great for you playing with loads of people and stuff like that. Birmingham used to be like that, and then you know I think the whole scene. You know I don't know whether it was punk era. I don't know whether venues. I don't know what happened, but basically it just a lot of it stopped. One of the good things that happened in Birmingham was that we had Ronnie Scott there, and I was fortunate enough to be part of the house band in the kind of the middle section. So you know, people like Robin Ford and Peter Green and stuff would come and play at Ronnie's, and I would be in the house band and play and see those kind of things. So that was great musically. That was good fun. That was a residency. You do that. I'd play every night of the week, but only for like half an hour, just before, like a warm up before the main band. I do that for a while, for a couple of years, and and then after a couple of years, another bass player called Tubby Dunn came and he took over. He was more of a compere, so he was able to talk to the audience and get them laughing, and it was more of a show than it was just about the music. But for quite a few years in Birmingham, there was a great scene. Yeah, really great scene, and all the musicians kind of knew each other. You know, the jazzers knew the rockers, and the rockers knew the funk guys, and everybody used to relate and talk to each other and stuff like that. You know what I mean? The last handful of years in Birmingham before I left, I live in Northampton, and I've been here 15 years or so. Last couple of years, the scene has felt so fragmented in Birmingham, and I don't know whether it's because so few gigs have closed down, whether the competition is so much bigger. You know what I mean? There's more musicians, and so there's more people that want to play and stuff like that. I don't know what it is, but it just feels a lot more separate than it ever used to. And then, funny enough, I live in Northampton, and Northampton up until the lockdown was back to how Birmingham used to be. There was always 2 or 3 gigs a week in Northampton somewhere. So there's always somewhere to go every night of the week. There was always somewhere to go and see live music, and sometimes you could go and see 2 or 3 things, play at one and nip across and see somebody else. Northampton is really great for live music, you know what I mean? Or was, I suppose with the lockdown it will have changed a little bit now, I suppose.
Yeah, you said you've been doing a couple of things during lockdown.
Yeah, nothing local though. I mean, nothing with any local musicians. Just like I said, recording for Marcus Malone or some stuff with John Verity. Been working with John for the last 2 or 3 years, and that's really good fun. I'm really enjoying that. He's a great guitar player, great singer, and a great, when I say technician, I don't mean as in the guitar player, but he knows his equipment, he knows the gear, you know what I mean? He knows what valves do and what amps do and what resistors do and all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? He's really involved. So, you know, from a technical point of view, if there's something that's not quite right with the guitar or something not quite, you know, he'll work on it and he'll have a conversation and he'll be thinking and you can, you know what I mean? So that is great, you know what I mean? And then he's got his own little studio. So we've recorded a handful. The last album, I think, we recorded at his place. And so that's great. In mixing process, you can have a conversation about how you like the sound and how things work and reverbs and stuff like that. So he's a great education. He's been really, really good fun to work with.
And what do you see for the future for yourself? What goals do you have?
I suppose in 2004, I did my own album. I did my own kind of jazz album with a bunch of friends, and I kept on thinking I should revisit some of that material and write some new stuff, you know what I mean? And so I'd like to do that. But by the same token, I'm really loving working with John Verity. I'm really loving working with Ash Wilson. Ash is great. We've been working on his new album. The Blues Caravan, the stuff I've been doing for Roof Records. Every year, that's a great challenge. You know, every year Thomas Roof signs up 3 new artists and takes them on the road for about a year. And you get to know people quite well, and you get to play different types of music, you know what I mean? Because they say blues, but actually it's blues rock, and, you know what I mean? There's all sorts of titles that come under blues. So you get to play with some great people, some interesting people, different approach. You get to you know, use your craft. So, I mean, hopefully, you know, next couple of years, that will come back as well. I mean, with the virus and the amount of people that you can have at venues, I don't know how viable it's going to be until they get a vaccine, you know what I mean, for any kind of touring thing, you know what I mean, any kind of usual thing. But I do hope that the live thing comes back. I love recording. I love being in the studio. I love producing records and playing on records. But, you know, standing in front of an audience and seeing the whites of their eyes, you know what I mean, and having that connection with them, then it's nothing that really beats that, you know what I mean. And the lockdown has been great from a technical point of view. I've got my little gear together and you know, sorted out a few techniques and recording things that I never used to do and understand the gear and all that kind of stuff a lot better. Great, you know what I mean? But still, it's not the same as playing in front of people and you know, making a mistake and you know that you've made a mistake and everybody else knows you make a mistake. How do you get that? How do you get out of it? You know what I mean? How do you make it work musically? How do you know, mess up or don't mess up, you know what I mean, but still communicate how you're feeling on what you want to do? That's what I miss more than anything, I think.
How can people get hold of your jazz album?
They would have to do it through, I think you could do it through iTunes, and I think...
Can they buy it from you direct, or...?
Yeah, in fact, that's probably better. Yeah, I've got, in the attic, I've probably still got, you know, 400 copies and stuff so yeah, maybe. Yeah,
so do you want to give a shout out to an email or some way of people contacting you?
Yeah, info@rogerinniss.com. Send me an email and yeah, we'll sort it out. Yeah, if people want to buy it, I mean, if I explain what's my thinking at the time of doing it, there's no piano on the album, and there's only guitar on a few tracks. What I loved going into the studio was you get a call very early on, basic track, you play with the drums and a guide vocal, and you there's a lot of space in what you do, and you hear the bass line, you hear the drums, and you hear stuff. And then, of course, you do it, you go away, everybody gets involved, they put all the other stuff on it. 6 months later, you hear the track, and it's full of all this stuff and all that beautiful space that you was trying to create as a musician. All that is, they get lost. So I call the album Lines because I like the simplicity. So there's basically bass, drums, percussion, and then the saxophone and trumpet. And then on a few songs, so there's 2 bands. One band is trumpet and saxophone, bass, drums, and percussion, and then the other band is guitar, saxophone, bass, drums, and percussion.
But it's featuring the bass, is it, through the core of it?
It's basically featuring the bass and trying to give space to, when I say featuring the bass, it's just giving me a room the bass. There's a few solos and a few bits and pieces on there, but it's not, you know, I don't think it's that involved, you know, compared to today's standards. There's some guys who do some amazing stuff. But I think my thinking was to try and just let you hear the tone of the instrument and let the instrument breathe a little bit, you know what I mean? And if you hear a saxophone and a trumpet and then a bass and there's nothing in between, you create your own harmony. You know, the human being will create the idea in his head that what he thinks the harmony should be, or what he hears from that. And I like that idea. I like the fact that you, as a listener, become the next instrument. You know what I mean? Instead of dictating by having the piano as a dominant instrument and the guitar as a dominant instrument, dictating what you hear, you leave the space so they can
Hear the
make
notes.
up, hear the notes themselves. And that was the idea behind the album. That's what made it work for
Cool.
me. So,
And it's called Lines.
lines, yeah.
Okay.
And the name of the band, I call the project the Erogenous Zone. So the Rog Inniss Zone, but I like the E, so the Erogenous Zone is what it was. I didn't think of that. Somebody else thought of that, but it was such a cool name that I just stuck with it. So, you know, if I ever do anything musically, it's usually under that title, the Erogenous Zone.
Okay, and you're thinking of doing the second one now to follow that
I'd
one
love
up?
to do it. Yeah, I'd love to do a second one. It's just there's just so many ideas though. There's so much, you know. There's so many things to do. You know what I mean, I'd like to do something about heroes. I'd like to do, you know, musical tribute to Muhammad Ali and Marvin Gaye and, you know what I mean, David Bowie, all these sort of people who were big influences and stuff. You know what I mean, I'd like to do some sort of instrumental tribute to each and every single one of them. You know what I mean? And then there's a lot of stuff happening in the world that you know, we need to talk about a little bit. You know, we need to be a little bit kinder to each other. We need to be a little bit more thoughtful to each other. And yeah, but I don't want to preach. I just want to have it in a title and then sketch something out and then let somebody make their own mind up about what they think I could possibly be talking about or however it relates to them. You know what I mean? That's what I'd like to do, something like that. That's where my head's at the minute.
What amp are you using at the moment?
I use an Eden World Series 800, and I use it with two different sets of speakers. I've got a very very old setup called Euphonic Audio that I got in the 90s when I was playing with LP Brooks. These two cabinets are like hi-fi cabinets. You get two tens, two fives, and a horn, but they've got great crossovers, and you know they sound really great. And even after all these years, I don't think you can really beat them. But they're very heavy. I mean, they're very, as in weight.
What is the amp you use? You mean
No, the speakers. So
the
the amp
speakers?
is all, the amp is always the same amp, the Eden. But I use it depending on how much weight or the tone of what the gig is. I use it with two different sets of speakers. You know what I mean? Dixon speakers or euphonic audio speakers, but always the Eden 800 amp.
That's what I was going to ask you as a joke. On Facebook, I see coming up these Scottish images of you. What's that all about? Where's that come from?
Well, you know how we do silly things when we're on tour.
Right, yeah.
I mean, and this is going back quite a few years. We were doing some gigs, and somebody got one of those hats that got hair in it, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just happened to have a tartan in it. You just happened to have ginger hair, you know what I mean? So everybody was playing it, putting it on and laughing and joking. So I just happened to put it on, and everybody laughed and joked and took a photo. Thought nothing of it. 20 years later, it's come back to haunt me. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
Mac Innes in it.
And that, yes, yeah. But having said that, I mean, the one that I'm enjoying is that Dylan Gibbons took the photo and melted it with Fred Astaire and put the two of them together and put me in one of Ginger Rogers's, you know what I mean, dresses and stuff like that. And as an image and an idea, I really like that. That's really funny. So that's where the Innis has come from. It's just being silly on the road. Just, you know,
You need
you've
it,
done
don't
this.
you?
Yeah, you've done the sound check. You kind of just waiting for dinner. There's a prop. You know what I mean? In fact, so many things over the years. You know, sometimes you're working in a gig and they have a theatre next door, so you go next door and you steal a monkey suit or something like that, and we play gig, you know what I mean? All those kind of, silliness that we do. That's where the McInnes thing came from anyway. So.
Ah, okay. Well, and all that stuff is needed, and it's good people find out about it, because when you spend hours and hours on the road with same people every day, day in, day out, you've got to have a laugh, haven't you?
Yeah, yes, yeah. And people have done all sorts of stuff, gaffer taped people's legs to snare drums and all that kind of stuff. So that, I mean, just for the fun of it, hidden stuff, and about to play on guitar, and I mean, they're taking the cable, and they go on stage and there's no cable and they don't know what to do. People find all stuff like that funny, you know what I mean? So.
So during the lockdown period, what books have you been reading?
Actually, if I'm really honest, the one big heavy book I'm reading is a book by David Icke at the minute about
Okay.
the 9/11. I'm just interested. I wouldn't really call myself a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but I'm just interested in another point of view of what they think happened at 9/11 and why they think happened. And so I started reading that. Generally, another couple of just little storybooks, but the David Icke thing has been quite heavy, and I've done a tiny bits of research as well. So if he's mentioned something I've not understood what it is, or I've been interested, I've gone on the internet to check out, whether I think he's talking truth. That's been the biggest thing that I've been doing.
Okay.
Reading through the lockdown. You know what I mean? So I'm still not. I'm not at the end. So I haven't got a conclusion. I'm not at the end yet. I'm pretty close, but not finished reading it, so I haven't got a conclusion. Yeah.
Right, okay. So do you believe in UFOs and all that stuff, or?
I don't know if I believe in you. I think there's more to life than what we think. Do you know what I mean? And I think if I was an alien and I was looking at people on Earth, I wouldn't come here, because I don't think that we're not very good at understanding each other, let alone somebody from outer space with a green head and purple skin, for instance. You know what I mean? So. Yeah, I think there's more. I think there's stuff that goes on. Like, you know what I mean? I think maybe we do get visited, and they hide and they look and they observe. You know what I mean? Like we do. We go to the jungle and we watch apes and we watch lions and we watch giraffes, and we come back and tell people about them. I think all that kind of stuff happens, but I've never seen an alien or being being kidnapped by one. But I think I'm quite open to the fact that maybe there's more to meets the eye. More to us than meets the eye. Yeah.
What about TV? You've been Netflixing it, or?
I don't have Netflix actually. I'm probably one of the few people who don't have Netflix. Terrestrial TV it's more than enough, because we don't like to watch too much TV if we can help it. You know what I mean? I've been enjoying Killing Eve. Do you know that? Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been enjoying that. A handful of films. Obviously with iTunes you get movies. I always loved 24, and used to watch it quite adamant up to about series 5 or
I've got all
6.
them.
So yeah, so exactly. So I've got another couple of those, and and working through those. But usually by the time we've had dinner and relaxed and stuff, we watch a little bit of news. If there's a decent film on, we might watch it and then go to bed. So we're not really heavy duty, TV people really. And what's on the TV, what's on the terrestrial is probably enough. And that's why I'm surprised that people have time to watch Netflix. But then I suppose the nice thing is they choose what they watch, so they choose how they're educated, as opposed to being dictated to by what's on terrestrial TV. So I do like the thought of it next week. I just haven't got round to sorting it out yet.
Right. And what's your your top childhood film that you remember?
The two films that my favourite film in the whole world is the Red Violin. Do you know that film?
I've heard of it. I've not seen it.
Yeah, it's a film. It's not because it's musical. It's just the way that the story unfolds. The long and short of it is a woman goes to see a fortune teller, and the fortune teller tells her all these things that's going to happen to her life, and then she dies without any of these things happen, and then all these things that the fortune teller talks about comes true. And it so happens that giving the film away, but the long and short of it is she's married to a violin maker, and she dies suddenly in childbirth, and he's so broken-hearted by it. But he uses her blood, mixes it with the varnish, and builds this violin, and puts the varnish in the violin. And this is then the story is how the violin goes around the world, and it becomes part of wars, and it becomes part of symphonies, and all these things that the fortune teller told her would happen in her life. This violin that lives that life for her. I mean,
When did you first see that?
Well, 1762 maybe, or something like that. A long time ago. A long time. And not. Yeah, I'm sure it was the early 90s. Samuel L. Jackson is like a auctioneer in it. You know, he's like a dealer, and this violin comes up for like horrendous amounts of money. You know what I mean? And the story unfolds.
Yeah, when
But I
did
do
you
like
first see it? When did you first see it?
I think I saw it when it first came out, which was whatever it was, 94, 96, something like that. You know what I mean? So
Cool.
yeah.
And you into podcasts or anything? Do you listen to many of them? Or Radio 4?
Radio 4 I listen to all the time. I used to be an avid listener to the Archers until they went through the lockdown, and then I struggle with the. I don't want to know too much. I like the story of how everybody was interacting, and I'm struggling with the fact that we're getting to find out what's going on in people's minds. You know, they're talking to themselves and telling you what's going on in their minds as opposed to living. But I listen to stories. I love all the stories that are on about 11:15 at night. You know, the story of the week and all that kind of stuff. I'll listen to that. I'll listen to that as a podcast, and anything else, you know, historical that you find that I might find around. I'll definitely get into. So I like podcasts. I think that's a great idea.
What would be the best piece of advice you would give yourself if you could go back when you're starting out?
Yeah, don't be scared. It's going to be okay. You know, when I first started, you know, a couple of my musician friends said to me, "You should think about buying a house." And I went, "Oh, I'm never going to earn enough money to buy a house. You know, you should think about doing this. You should think about doing that." And you think as a musician, it's never going to happen. And I mean, actually, if I'd have thought about buying a house, I would have had a nice big house now. If I'd have thought about doing a lot of the things that they said to do, you know, and not be frightened, not think that it's not going to work out, but have confidence that everything is going to be okay. And anything that happened, it's never going to be forever. So if you buy a house and you lose it, then next, you know, 2 years later, you scrape the money together, you buy another house and move on. You know what I mean? So that would be the biggest advice I would give myself: not to be frightened, not to be so timid and think, you know what I mean, that stuff is not going to work out. To just be confident that things are going to work out for you, and trust that, you know, you're doing a good job.
And do you feel you're in that place right now?
Yeah, I am. Yes, yeah. I feel that. Yeah,
You're
I
happy
feel that
with
I'm
life
doing
right now, and you.
very, yeah, you know, very happy. You know, fortunately, I'm healthy. You know what I mean? With the exception, I mean, like everybody, this year was a great year. You know what I mean? I was gonna be in the States 3 or 4 times with various different people. A female saxophone player called Vanessa Collier. I'd got a little tour lined up with her, and a great guitar player called Laura Chavez. I was really looking forward to that. Blues Caravan had some stuff in the States. We have 3 tours lined up in Europe. You know what I mean? Plus, the beginning of this year, I think an album. The album came out with John Verity. The album came out with Marcus Malone. I produced Bonnie Sky's album, and I produced Brian Perry's album, and an album with Michael Roach, plus another handful of other things. I mean, so there was a lot of stuff that was kind of, you know, this is going to be a good year. This is going to be lots of promotion and stuff like that, you know. And the lockdown has just changed all that. You know what I mean? So, you know,
How do you manage all that? All these different acts and bands. You know,
I don't know.
drummers are known for being in more than one sort of band and that, but as a guitar player, you know, it's always been sort of one band. But I don't know how you guys can manage it and have it all run smoothly without pissing anyone off.
Well, but it doesn't. Inevitably, it doesn't run smoothly. If everything works like clockwork, then it's relatively easy. But of course, you know, you work with A and you give them priority. You work with B and they get second priority, and you work with C. But inevitably, A has to change a plan that encroaches on B. You know what I mean? B has a change of plan that encroaches on A. You know what I mean? Inevitably, there's always a little bit of jiggery pokery. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. So it's very hard to keep it balanced. But this is the thing that I'm saying about being fearful. You know what I mean? You tend to think, oh, I don't want to upset anybody. I don't want to piss anybody off. I don't want to, you know what I mean? And so I won't do this and I won't do that. And I can't do this and I can't do that. And inevitably, you know what I mean, if you go for it, you talk to people, usually people are quite understanding. People will be, you know, not everybody, but usually people, okay, you know, these days, very, very few bands can afford to pay people a wage enough to keep, can afford to pay a wage enough to keep any musician. So musicians have to do more than one thing. If they're teaching, then sometimes they can't leave on Friday night to go to gig in Scotland because they've got to teach. So you have to get a dev. Or if they're working with other bands, then they're not available for this gig because they're away doing 3 gigs. So, you know what I mean? And usually these days people understand that. You know, so that's how you juggle it. You try and be as honest and upfront with people and say this is how it is. You know, and people say, well, I can't, you know, if I could pay you a wage or have one project that paid enough money for you to live on and do that, that would be great. But not everybody can afford to do that.
No, so it's the money though that puts you in the A position normally.
Yeah, I said,
Because
yeah,
you got to live, ain't you? I understand. So
well, you have to pay the and you know, if you're smart, you try and live as sensibly as possible. You know what I mean? I've only got 5 Rolls Royces and 6 Porsches
and 10
and a
kids.
Lamborghini. Yeah, 19 kids. You know what I mean? And yeah, no, but you know, you try and live modestly. You try and make it so that, you know, because like actors, you know, you have good days and bad days. You know, like a lot of us, everybody had all these plans for this year. You know, Corona's come along, and all of a sudden everything changes. But in the past, it would have been the same thing. You have a tour, somebody gets sick, the tour's cancelled. You know what I mean? You have a recording session that's worth, you know, $5,000, and all of a sudden studio blows up or something happens, and you know what I mean, all of a sudden. So these things happen in life. It's not that they don't ever happen. You just have to work with them.
What's your views on people sort of videoing you at gigs, like on and sticking it up on YouTube and things?
Um, I don't mind. I mean, I'm not overly keen. I don't mind, but you know, I like the days when what you did was for the people that were there. You know what I mean? So 60 people came out to see you, and you gave them something that was specific to them. B, you could get away with making mistakes and stuff like that. Sometimes, you know, you make a mistake and it's on Facebook or, you know, social media, and it's there forever. You know what I mean? And it might not be showing your best side, or you know what I mean, and stuff like that. But that's the way that we live, isn't it? That's how we live. It'd be great if people would put their phones down and just enjoy the music and just enjoy the moment and not worry about having to keep it for prosperity, because it doesn't need to be kept for prosperity. You know what I mean? It's an emotional thing that's
In the
supposed to
moment.
happen in the moment. That's what music is there for. And I get it, you know, it's great. It's a great feeling, and they want to carry the feeling with them. But, you know, as soon as you watch it secondhand the day after, you're in a different space, aren't you? You know what I mean? So I don't mind them doing it, but I wish they wouldn't do it. That's what I'm saying. That's my answer to that question.
Do you have a favourite album that you've played on, where you thought the bass sounds amazing and you're really happy with everything?
At the minute, the last Marcus Malone album
Okay.
uh, that we've just done, Marcus produced that himself, and he did great with getting the bass sound and the ideas. Um,
And did you do that in the studio, or did you do that in
yeah,
the?
yeah, we
Because I've worked with
recorded that.
Marcus,
Yeah.
but
So you know,
so I did, but
yeah.
I did it in his flat he had at the time, the guitar
Oh
overdubs
yeah,
and stuff. So yeah,
yeah.
it was really good
No,
fun.
we went to Bristol to record in a proper recording studio and stuff, something that Inniss Sirens had organised, and so that was great fun. We all played in real time, looking at each other and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And got a general. So that's kind of nice. Um, you know, I like the Ryan Perry album that I've just done. You know what I mean? I think some, but then there's a process involved. You know, so you haven't met somebody, you see them for the first time, you talk to them about ideas, and they bring them to life. You know what I mean? You're working on songs, you're living in the same space and time. You know what I mean? For 10, 15 days, and I think we got a good result out of that. You know what I mean? I wish we got more time to sort out a few things with the drums and a few things with some of the guitars. But you know, for the period of time that we had and what we ended up doing, I think we did all right. You know what I mean? John Verity's album Passion, that's really good fun. That was really good fun recording that. You know what I mean? I enjoy that process. And John, like I said, is really easy and really good fun to work with. So that's three, but I probably have to sit around for ages and look them through. You know what I mean? But
do you like listening to yourself on the albums? Do you play them?
No, not at all. No, I'm too busy thinking, oh, I should have done that. Oh, that doesn't sound very good. Oh, that's in front of the beat. Oh no, that's behind the beat. You know what I mean? So I'm too critical really when you listen to your own, you know, myself again. You know what I mean? And then sometimes, but occasionally, but not very often, I'm then pleasantly surprised. It's like, oh, that's better than I remember.
Your head's bopping and you're like, yeah.
Oh, that's okay. They captured it. You know what I mean? But it's so relative, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's so relative. So.
Yeah, and is there anything you dislike about the music? You know, like the driving or the long times away. Is there anything you dislike about it really that you?
No, there's nothing that I dislike about it. I wish that as musicians we were a little bit kinder to each other. Do you know what I mean? I think some people feel that it's competitive. Being a musician is a competitive sport. You know what I mean? And they treat, you know, other bands as if their band is better than their band, and their band is more important than their band, and their guitar player is better than. And in my humble opinion, none of us are better than any of this. We're all different. We all serve a purpose. You know, one of the strangest questions I get asked is, you know, so are you famous? You know what I mean? Who have you played with? And I say, well, you know, I can tell you lots of people that I've played with, and a guy that's really famous in Finland. You know what I mean? I go to Finland and I played with a superstar in Finland. You've never heard of him. You know what I mean? So I go to Finland and I'm a superstar because I'm playing with him, and then I come here and I shop at Tesco's and nobody makes the slightest bit of difference. You know what I mean? And so at the end of the day, we're all the same. Some people are big, famous, big, whatever it is over here, but not in this territory. But because they think that they're superstars here, they think they're superstars everywhere. And so they treat everybody, they treat other people, you know what I mean, in an unkind way. And I wish that we wouldn't do that to musicians. I wish that we would just understand that we're all in this together. You know what I mean? We're all making music. You know what I mean? I know 3 chords, you know 4 chords. That doesn't make you better than me. It just means that you know a little bit more than me. You could teach me the extra chord, but I can do stuff with 3 chords that you wouldn't have thought of doing with your 4 chords. You do stuff with your 4 chords that I could never do because I only know 3 chords. But that doesn't make it better or worse. It just makes it different and just exciting, in my humble opinion. So that's what I think I'd prefer. That's what I don't like. I just think that we sometimes we're too competitive and bitter, and you know, I want to go on last because we're the biggest band, and you can go on first because you're the, you know what I mean, you're the runner-up and all that kind of stuff. Don't be like that. It's, you know what I mean? We all start and we all finish. One day we're all in a van before transit, going at the motorway to try and get to a gig. The next minute we're on a jet plane. It's the same scenario. Nobody's better or worse than anybody. People in the jet plane didn't get there overnight. They went in a van. They started with the van. So why give the people in the van a hard time? Why treat them like shit? They don't need to. You know what I mean? That's my opinion. That's what I think.
Have you ever had any tuition for your life from starting out to now on the bass?
No, I haven't. The biggest advantage, the biggest thing that happened to me was when I was living in Birmingham. I had a flat in Edgbaston, and above me was a guy who used to play bass with Blood, Sweat and Tears.
Right.
And he was studying in England, and he had studied at Berkeley Jazz School, and he'd got all his notes with him. So we're when you find out I was a musician, chat, laugh, joke. And sooner or later, he says, I've got all these notes from Berkeley. Would you like to have a look at them? I said, yeah. And he came down with a huge big folder of 4 years' work, and I just basically went through that. That's my education. But I didn't go anywhere to do it. I did it at home. You know what I mean? But that was the education that kind of made the difference for me, really. You know what I mean? And understanding a bit of harmony and stuff like that. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah. Just curious if you ever had any, like, you hit a brick wall with your learning and you thought, oh, I'd have a couple of lessons and try and get over that wall,
There's so many so many people that I would love to have lessons with and have time, but that's the boring thing, isn't it? Once you're into a groove as a professional musician, you know what I mean, then the important thing is to try and stay afloat. You know what I mean, and try and keep earning money and keep paying the bills. So having time to sit and have a lesson of somebody is few and far between. And my advantage, I suppose, is that I always take stuff with me on tour. So I'll always have a couple of books with me and an iReel book and a metronome and a little set of headphones and stuff like that. And any time I've got a day off or half a day off in my hotel room, I'll work through some stuff. You know what I mean? I'll kind of.
And what is that? What sort of thing do you practice?
Well, it'll depend on what I think I need. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just simple things like staying in time with the metronome. You know what I mean? Just trying to make notes as long as possible or as short as possible. You know what I mean? Playing so much in the metronome that you don't hear it. You know what I mean? Other things, it's like practicing more scales again, more harmony. Sort of jazz and walking bass lines is always one that's really good. You know what I mean? Alternative. There's a C. Find a book. There's a C. What other notes can I play instead of C at the beginning of the bar? You know what I mean? So searching for alternative root notes and stuff like that. That kind of stuff I'll end up practicing. That's what I'll do. Just trying to make things a little bit more interesting for myself, really.
And what advice would you give to young bass players that are starting out, trying to get into the instrument?
First of all, understand what the instrument is there for, and B, and this is a strange one, what you want to do with it, because this is the other thing. I'm talking earlier about being kinder to each other. One bass player might feel that it's important to play as many notes as possible, and another bass player feels it's really important to play as few notes as possible. Doesn't make one bass player better or worse than anybody else. It just makes them different. So what do you want to do with the bass? What do you want to say? I mean, you've got people like Pino Palladino who just, any band that he sits in, he creates this great atmosphere, but never takes over. You know what I mean? He never kind of, leads the band. And then you get people like Marcus who lead their own band and they do some great stuff from the front. So what do you want to do? How do you hear the bass? And then what's the job of the bass? You know what I mean? And then when you can work that, come to terms with all that inside your own head, then you'll know what you need to do to be the best bass player that you need to be. You know what I mean? I think you've got to answer those questions. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes, you start listening to Jacko and you think this is all I want to do is play like Jacko, and it takes you 15 years to realize that really it wasn't to play like Jacko, it was Jacko's sound, because, you know what I mean, you like Jacko's sound in a country and western band, you know what I mean, but you don't get there automatically, you just want to play like Jacko. So, but I think if you, as a young musician, if you can kind of work out what you want to say as a musician, why you like the instrument, and then the job of the instrument, you can work out how to do the job, because there's no point in being the bass player if you want to be the lead guitar player. You know what I mean? There's already a guitar player, unless you're going to form a band without a guitar player so that you can be the lead guitar player. And I'm definitely up for whatever you want to do. If you want the bass to have distortion on it and then have light strings on and bend it and treat it like a Telecaster, then if that's how you see it, then that's how you see it. That's great, you know what I mean? But inevitably, the bass has a job, the guitar has a job, the drums have a job. And when they all work together, there's something that happens just musically. And if you understand that, then you can start to decide how you want to approach what you do with it.
Okay, there's some great advice there. So, is there any music you would not like to play if you had the choice?
No, in fact, people ask me all the time, what's something like, what do you enjoy, or what's the best music? And I always say it's just good music or bad music. Good music with good people. Do you know what I mean? And good music with bad people. But it's usually the vibe of it. You know what I mean? If you've got, it doesn't matter. So you've got a function gig and you've got a great bunch of musicians, and you're playing Mustang Sally, and you've been playing Mustang Sally for 25 years in the key of A flat. You know what I mean? And you're kind of bored with it. But you've got a great bunch of guys with you, and all of a sudden, that's it. That night, that song is just amazing. In fact, talking about Mustang Sally, I saw Buddy Guy play Mustang Sally on a gig, and I had played that song hundreds of times with all these bands over the years, and that when I saw Buddy Guy play it, that was when I understood what the song was about. Because Buddy Guy sang it and put the story over in such a way that I knew what he was talking about. Up until then, it was just a song and a sequence that you knew that people would call on a gig, and you just play it. You know what I mean? So I think the important thing is just to understand, you know, what you want to do.
That's great, man. Well, I'm going to ask you a few quick questions. See how you get
Okay.
on. So, cash or card?
I love cash.
Cash man.
Yeah.
Marcus Miller or Anthony Jackson?
Anthony Jackson.
Anthony Jackson. Joanne Shaw Taylor or Lawrence Jones?
Joanne Shaw Taylor.
Love or money?
Oh, love, yeah.
4 or 5 string?
6.
6. Fucking hell.
6, yeah.
Is that what you play now? 6.
I've been playing 6 string for 20 odd years. Yeah.
Blimey. So what's the tuning on that? Not the same as a guitar, surely.
No, you just have a high C. So
it goes B. Low, I know it's a low B on a 5, isn't it?
Low B, yeah. Then E, A, D, G, and then C above.
Oh, the C at the top end.
Yeah. So yeah, you're still playing in fourths. You're still behaving like a bass. All the idea is you just have the range. I mean, you can. Because the nice thing about bass, it plays some great things, but it gets a little bit lost, you know what I mean, in the lower register. So you can play some nice bass ideas in an upper register that guitar players wouldn't have thought of playing. So.
Bad me. I should have asked you what guitar you use, the make your guitar.
Well, at the moment, I've got this bass called John Shuker, who used to make guitars, but I've had John builds great basses. I've had John's bass for this last one I had in 2000. The one that I'm going to show you now, I had in 2000, which is my most common bass, the bass I've used for everything. Oh. I don't know whether you'll be able to see that.
That's lovely. So, yeah, blimey.
And that's a 6 string. And I've had that. John built this for me in 2000, and I've played it. It's on hundreds of albums, all the John Taylors, all Lawrence Joneses, Ollie Brown, Marcus Malone, everything. It's my main. I've got other instruments I like to record with, but this is my main thing. In fact, actually, I'm in a conversation with a guy from Bassworks about trying to build a new instrument. I mean. But the great thing about this is it's got Bartolini's on it, so I know it so well. I can plug it into a cardboard box amp-wise and get a sound out of it. You know what I mean? It's active circuitry. So I've got bass, middle, and treble, tone control. I can basically get any kind of sound that I want out of it with me. Some people get a little bit intimidated by, some guitar players. You get the conversation. A bass should have 4 strings. That's all there is to it in life. You know what I mean? And why we've got 6, and the sound is too modern for this, or it's not modern enough for that. You know what I mean? All these kind of little things that go on in people's minds. But generally, this instrument has it's been a lifesaver for me.
Okay. What strings do you use on
it? These are is it Alexia?
And what gauge?
45 to 105, 4 string, and then I've got 130 at the B, and I've got 30 at the C at the top.
Okay. And well, getting on with the quick fire question: do you prefer fretted or fretless?
I love fretted bass because I love fretless bass, but you have to think about it too much. You have to make sure that you're playing tunes. So I love the sound of a fretless bass, but ease of playing a fretted bass as well. I mean, so I suppose the answer to the question is both. Yeah, but yeah.
Blues or jazz?
Jazz,
Tea or coffee?
coffee,
Do you sing in the shower?
no.
I'll love you and leave you. And
Okay, sir.
give us the thumbs up.
Thanks, Tommy. You're a star. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Very
No,
appreciated.
pleasure.
Cheers.
Pleasure, man. Cheers. Bye.
Okay. Cheers. Thanks, Tom. Bye.
Hey, it's Tommy Allen from TommyAllenMusic.com, and that was Roger Inniss. You can find out more about Roger and his music at www.rogerinniss.com. Next week we have Tim Aves, so come and check that out next Wednesday at 7 p.m. right here on Tommy Allen Music. Please give us a like, hit the subscribe button. Till next week, a word from our director.